Start out. All right. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. Welcome, everyone. Council's back to work. We uh, started our first meeting from the summer last night. But we will get rolling here. And our first item is J-Pop Committee's panels with key stakeholders, and that's Holly and Marty.
It's going to be Hannah Sloan, right, Hannah? Are you gonna do the section?
Yep, absolutely.
Would you like me to share the slides, or do you have them handy?
I do have them handy.
Great.
Alrighty. So just want to kind of recap what the J-pop committee is tasked with. Oh, I just lost them. Okay, there we go. And kind of how that has guided our process moving forward and trying to have some panels of important stakeholders in the community and learning as much as possible from them. So the J-pop committee is charged with serving as a forum for people with lived experience and frontline workers to be engaged and give feedback on key questions as the Justice Project implementation plan is implemented. We are participating in the development of an evaluation plan to measure progress and results, monitoring data to track progress on the implementation plan projects, preparing an annual report, providing recommendations for plan updates, and ensuring public engagement and communications are robust to facilitate accountability in the plan's implementation. So with that, we have invited some individuals to participate in panel discussions and attend our J-pop committee meetings. And the purpose of these panels is to get more input on key questions from people with lived experience. Last month on August 21st, we held our first panel and we had 6 individuals with histories of frequent incarceration, or they had family members who have frequent incarceration. And we learned a lot from them. So there's a couple questions we asked, and what guided our discussion is what gaps in the criminal legal system and social diversion services or ways the systems currently operate contribute to individuals being repeatedly incarcerated. We also asked them what their ideas for changes in the system are that could reduce reincarceration. So each individual was asked both of those questions and shared, and then we had an open discussion amongst them. The input that we had from them was very powerful, insightful, and it confirmed other research and other just information that, service providers and other members of the community have shared with their experience. And we learned more details about how gaps related to timing coordination are big contributing factors to reincarceration. So next steps this month, next week on the 18th, our J-pop meeting will consist of reflecting on the first panel discussion we had last month and exploring how the gaps related to timing and coordination in our system could be addressed. So trying to come up with one specific resolution or just ideas for resolutions, and then trying to plan for our next panel discussion in October. Our focus is hopefully going to be figured out at our September J-pop meeting with the help of the other committee members. And we also welcome members of the committee to suggest any groups of people that we should invite and any key questions that we should ask of those panel members, because we want to learn as much as possible so we can come up with some solutions or potential solutions as quickly as possible.
Oh, that was great, Hannah. Thank you so much. Thoughts? Any questions or comments? I appreciate this work so much. I think it's super important to hear from those that have that lived experience. And it's nice to see that aligns with a lot of the research and the work that we've done over the last couple of years, to know that that's very relevant and it's a pretty good data point. So, Peter?
I just couldn't be more pleased, even though I missed this meeting and I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch the whole thing, because this is exactly what J-pop is there to do. And getting this sort of lived experience and that from from frontline workers is exactly what we need. And J-pop is really fulfilling its role. There's been a conversation going over the last couple of days about upcoming upcoming J-pop meetings, and I'm just seeing this as such an important time, an important group to be having these discussions, and more to come.
Other thoughts? Stephen?
Yeah, I'll just add kudos to Hannah. I thought we've had real struggles, ups and downs with incorporating voices of people with lived experiences, and I thought the selection of people on that was fantastic. I thought that was the most constructive session like that we've had in years. Everybody was intelligent, sensitive, articulate, thoughtful. Um, Really nice job, Hannah.
Thank you. And huge shout out to Marty and Holly for helping with all the coordination. I think it was great for them to learn from each other too. I think that was a really big takeaway from me, especially individuals with loved ones, and seeing how the other people who have experience with incarceration were able to share their experiences and hopefully give some hope to those parents as well.
Brian?
Um, could you just give, I apologize, I might have come in a little bit late, but could you give just a 1 or 2 minute summary of some of the issues that the people you talked with brought up?
Absolutely. So some of the gaps that they mentioned were, I think a big one was lack of housing and supportive housing, in particular for individuals with serious mental illness or substance use disorders. One quote we have is from a panelist said, a big reason people cycle through the jail so much is that they're waiting on housing or they're waiting on treatment. And during that period of time, they're back on the streets. And then 9 times out of 10, or almost 10 times out of 10, they're going to end up getting loaded again because they don't have the support or resources to stay clean and sober. So we saw a lot of these individuals were in this cycle of wanting to get clean, but not having the resources or the ability to go and get that treatment. One individual said that there was a barrier with getting into detox and having only a 15-minute window of time to make that appointment. And if you can't make it, then you lose that bed and you're back on the street until another opportunity comes up. And it's really important to have an option for people when they make that decision to get clean, because it doesn't come around very often, and when it does, you want to be able to seize that opportunity. And then another individual had mentioned, they were at detox and their bed for further treatment fell through. They weren't able to go on to a 30 to 90-day treatment facility. And so they ended up leaving detox early because why would they wait and go through the withdrawal for a couple more days if they were just going to have the same result of being back out on the street? And then just the lack of resources. So the timing, not enough resources, the court system and how slow it has been, especially over the past few years. One individual said that he is potentially going to court for a case from 2022 and might have to go back to jail as part of his sentencing. And after being 2 years clean, that's not an environment that you want to go back to. So that's really tough for those people. And then not enough legal representation, lack of programming in the jail. They wanted to see more options and more opportunities for people to spend their time while incarcerated and when they get released. So having work and just having things to do to deter them from engaging in substance use or anything else. Let's see. I think, and then the timing of releases is from jail and from treatment. It puts them in a really unfortunate position where there's no housing options open. Even if it's the shelter, you can't get into a bed. They wanted to see a lot more funding put into programs like recovery court, mental health court, and help people deal with their addiction before they develop a really lengthy criminal history. One-on-one counseling in the jail. They wanted to see more AA and NA meetings in the jail, mentorships between people in jail and formerly incarcerated individuals. I think that would be wonderful. I think they all agreed on that, and just expanding resources in general.
So it sounds like you're in the planning stages now for the next panel, right? And I noticed there was a note there that invited steering committee members to, bring some ideas to the table. Did you want to do that today? Did you want to have a brainstorming session? Is that kind of what I saw? Holly, you're nodding, then you quit nodding. Which?
I was if time allows, Barry, if time allows and people have some ideas, that would be awesome. Yeah, we want to make that open to you
Well, let's
all.
just take a couple minutes. We don't have to take long, but do people have thoughts? I mean, I love the direction that you're going. Brian?
I know that Tank Tanksley has developed what he calls peer support, but I believe that's more not necessarily in the jail, but like officers being trained in the field. And anyway, I don't know if he's on the call, but I would like to see more peer support groups run in the jail. A number of years ago, NAMI did lead a peer support group in the jail. And by peer support, I mean it's led by a trained facilitator, not necessarily, a psychologist or social worker, but someone who has struggled with mental health challenges. And so NAMI does this in many, prisons and jails all around the country. And I think that's something that would be a big need in the jail if in fact it's not already going on. And I think they do have like episodic things like this, but this would be something that you'd have a meeting once a week, that type of thing.
Thanks, Brian. Raylene?
Thank you. Lack of representation, I think, has been an ongoing struggle, not only for Whatcom County, but nationwide. With the shortage of attorneys, I know that a lot of people have heard that in the past. I can tell you, as of yesterday, I only had one person that wasn't represented, and I think we'll have somebody by today. So that's a huge improvement from what it was a couple of years ago. We still struggle with frequent flyers, and that, when they're arrested, a lot of times they're arrested with other individuals. And that creates more conflicts, which means we have to find more representation with the limited supply of attorneys that are outside. And that is a struggle that a lot of counties face. But we also see when you have prosecutors leaving the job and public defenders leaving the job, then those cases start over. And so you have an attorney that was representing either one side or the other, and now they were ready for trial, and then that defense attorney quits and is no longer working for the county. So now you have to find another defense attorney to start that case over. And in the middle of that, they get into a jail fight. So now the public defender's office can't represent, and there's 3 people that were involved in that jail fight. So now you have to find outside counsel for all of those defendants that were involved in that jail fight. Those are ongoing struggles that also cause backlog of cases. And when you have a backlog of cases, things aren't being tried quickly enough, which can lead to people being released and then getting into more trouble. So I see the representation issue as a difficult thing. We need to work hard on making sure that there's stability in both the defense and prosecution, that we're not seeing people leaving those jobs, because every time you leave those jobs, they start over. And I think that is feeding into some of the lack of representation. There is also people that are incarcerated that try to prolong their cases and do try to get rid of their attorneys. And then they share that with other inmates. And I think that's a piece that you're not going to hear in the interviews, but I can tell you of one defendant that went through 8 different defense attorneys. And every time he was assigned a new attorney, he worked really hard on getting that attorney fired. And when the judges wouldn't release that individual, then they decided to file a suit against their attorney. That defendant then ended up having to represent himself after the 8th attorney was provided to him. So there's a lot of other factors that go into this, and I just want to voice that so people understand some of the other complications that go into representation.
Peter.
As interested as I am in the current state of the jail, or, its current sorry state, looking ahead to design of the new jail, and particularly the new jail and the behavioral care center. And I'll be speaking about this more later in this meeting, but JPOP has a very important role in getting our people with lived experience and frontline workers to interact with and understand the models that are being proposed for diversion, for prosecutorial diversion, for the community-centered behavioral health campus model that we're looking at. And while it's rather complex, it's also something that frontline workers and our justice-involved folks have a lot of real experience with. And so it's going to be critical that we, for the next year or so, involve these panels and JPOP in reflecting on this, the models that are being developed. What I wanted to say. Thank you.
Birdie.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, because substance abuse seems to be such an overwhelming issue when people are incarcerated in that circumstance, are you having any panels that are made up of people with repetitive incarcerations that don't involve substance abuse? And I was curious if you'd perhaps hear different types of recommendations and ideas from those folks, and if that was a consideration.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that yet. It's a great point. What would you especially would like to hear? Or if you were like, what's the thing that you would want to understand, Bertie?
Well, I would be curious to know, for people for whom substance abuse or serious mental illness isn't the driving factor behind their incarcerations, what the barriers are and what could be done differently to help them avoid recurrent criminal offenses. And my guess is, although those are the minority of people, the issues might be quite different from those that are intensely wrapped up with mental illness and substance abuse.
That's really interesting. And we didn't know that the panelists were all going to be people who had histories of addiction and or mental illness or were family members of somebody like that. We didn't know. We just put out the call for people who had been frequently incarcerated, and that is who we wound up with.
Well, that tells a story.
It does.
Well, that's it. That is the majority. And
Yes.
particularly the majority, I would imagine, that have engaged family members. If a person has recurrent incarcerations independent, they may have of substance abuse or mental illness, they may have alienated the family to the point that they are less involved. I mean, that's an educated guess. That's not anything based on hard evidence.
Dan.
Good afternoon, everyone. I went on a ride along with Bellingham Bike Patrol a couple weeks ago, and 100% of the people that they contacted, it was for substance use, public substance use. And then we know from data collected from the jail that at least 80% of the folks that are in there there's some substance use history, so that's consistent. I have a question though for Raylene, I think. So you had mentioned the problem with representation, for public defense for people who are charged with crimes as being an issue to kind of like slow things down. The state mandated that we provide a certain amount of defense attorneys per I think it's per like 20 people or 25 people, depends on whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony. You're going to know better than I would. According to our court, the Muni court, we don't have the issue of lack of public defenders. And I actually testified in front of the state Supreme Court last year to that effect. And Raylene, I'm just wondering, is that throughout the county system and the small cities systems, or can you just enlighten us a little bit on that?
So the caseload standards are statewide. The American Bar Association passed suggested new caseload standards, and then it went to the Washington State Bar and then to Supreme Court. So there were caseload standards that were implemented, but one of the struggles that we see is it's easier to find attorneys to represent gross misdemeanors and misdemeanors because the qualifications and the requirements aren't as high. When you're getting into Class A and Violent B felonies, that's where we see more struggles. And you see people start off in courts of limited jurisdiction, which would be district court municipalities. Okay, that's where you got a lot of the DWS thirds, the DV assault fours, the DUIs. They're lower level offenses, but most people kind of start there. You also have your bottom line thefts and your trespasses, okay? Then they graduate and start committing more violent offenses. And you see that with people that are on drugs a lot. And then it's harder to find attorneys to represent somebody that's charged with rape, robbery first, assault first, murder. They have certain requirements to be able to defend somebody at that level. And there's a lack of attorneys that are qualified, as well as not all attorneys want to defend those types of cases. It's a hard job to do. There is people that have left. I know Brodsky's retiring. Doug Hildall recently retired. Those are two Class A attorneys that took on some really difficult cases. And we don't have the same amount of attorneys returning to do those types of jobs. So we have some younger ones that are hungry, that we want to make sure they're qualified to take those cases. But there is struggles. There's also struggles, what I've heard from other municipalities, for representation on conflict cases. People that have conflict cases have been in the system a lot more. They've been arrested more frequently, and they're in the system, and they're not always the easiest to work with. And when they've been conflicted from one case, whether it's Bellingham Municipal Court or Blaine Municipal Court, they have to find another attorney to take those cases. And I have heard from other court administrators throughout the small cities that they have struggled to find conflict attorneys to take those cases. Just like it's difficult for us to find translators, because we're all competing for translators, we're also competing for defense attorneys, and defense attorneys that are qualified to take those higher cases.
Thanks.
Marty.
I just wanted to make sure that you all know about this report that we did in June, and I'm unsure if this has gone out to IPRTF members. Maybe Jill can affirm or not. We're trying to get it posted on the Justice Project website, but this is work that Holly and I did with health department funding with Dean, and it's focus groups and a survey of, we did 2 focus groups plus a survey of people who in the jail. And this is one of the pieces of research that was kind of echoed by a lot of what the panel members said at the JPOP meeting. But I would like to get this to you if you haven't seen it, and to other IPRTF members.
Thanks, Marty. Yes, that's a good idea. Well, thanks everybody for weighing in. I think, I'm not skipping to the next or item 5, but I think this is something we should, if we have room on our main task force meeting, have Hannah give the same report she gave us. I think it would be very valuable for the task force. Co-chairs, what do you think?
I think so too. I think that'd be great. In the next meeting, we have a lot to do, but Hannah did such a good job, I think, with summarizing. I don't think it'll take very long, and it's very powerful. So
yeah, I think you could do it in 15 minutes, probably.
And perhaps what Marty was talking about just now could be included in the packet. I think that it would be good to. I can't remember. I know that I've seen it. I can't remember that if it was in a packet already or not, but it sure wouldn't be a problem to have it in our September packet.
Okay. Well, Jill?
Just to clarify, Peter, are you asking for the packet materials to be the presentation that Hannah just gave, or that last document that Marty put up there?
Yeah, that's a good question. A good clarifying question. I was actually referring to what Marty was just referring to.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, well, let's move on. Next item is legislative agenda. I don't know who's leading this conversation. Jill?
This is an annual standing agenda item for the steering committee for every September. So I believe the intent here is to get the conversations going about next year's legislative agenda.
Okay. So what we want to do, I guess, is start drafting what would be the IPTRF's eventual legislative agenda. That's what I take what Jill just said. So ideas, Peter?
Well, I've been around the block now a few years, but I always feel like we're playing catch up, and there's just never somehow the gears aren't all aligning. So could somebody like Barry or Jill or anyone else lay out what the best method for and timing is for us to get our messages across, our priorities across? Thank you.
Timing is a tricky question because everybody's so immersed in the budget work right now that there's been little or no discussion that I've heard about what next year's asks are going to be for next year's session. So, you know, process wise, I think the way we've done it in the past is we've just brainstormed. Stephen, you were co-chair back in those days that when we did the last round. What's previous rounds anyway? What's your recollection of our process?
Well, my recollection is Peter's recollection that we're always behind the curve. If we know that people are wrapped up in, first of all, this is on the early end of when other conversations have started in prior years, but
Yeah.
even that was too late. And there was conversation of starting the discussion in the summer. And it seems like we should know what our needs would be by that point. And we know that the budget is going to intervene. So that's a time when we could get attention from people. I would say we should get on this right away. We should get the people like Kayla and Jed and whoever Dan suggests would be the city person corralling some of these issues. And have that start right away, maybe even a work group of the steering committee or the task force or something. Because I think if you wait to start vetting some of these ideas until an October meeting, say, then you're really behind the curve and you're probably too late already. So those are my observations.
Well, I'm guessing that someone in the administration, probably Caleb or Jed, have started at least some sort of jot down of what this list is going to look like. I don't think it's completely unworked. There's a few things left over, I think, that are going to be from last session that they may be looking at, redoing another ask. But I think that's what we need. We need to find out what the executive's office is thinking. That would help us get started. In the meantime, though, we should be thinking about our lane and what do we feel is important. So Brian, go ahead.
Barry, could I just intervene here for a second with a follow-up?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say I also assume that Kayla and Jed are making notes on this already, but the understanding from several years ago was that there would be some collaboration and discussion. So why the heck have they not reached out to us if they're starting to make a draft list? And can we somehow get all the players to agree on some sort of protocol and schedule on this so that we start talking with each other when it has some chance of being productive?
Absolutely. I'll take that on because that includes the council. I mean, we need to be having those conversations with the council as well. I mean, so it's a bigger issue. So Jill and I'll work on that. Brian, go ahead.
So Stephen Gockley and I, several years ago, as a part of the behavioral health committee, we did some, met with legislators, during this session. And also I recall that Alicia Rule at one point, early in one of the prior sessions, reached out to Whatcom County and said, well, is there anything I should be advocating for? But that was, in my view, that's way too late.
That was during
So
the session, she asked.
I believe.
Yeah.
I believe, yeah. And right now, and even earlier over the summer, is often when you can bend, a 40th or 42nd LD legislator's ear about sponsoring particular legislation or educating them on what's going on with the 23-hour facilities and HCA, issuing regulations. That to me is got to be at the top of the list because we have a youth facility in Everson that's not being utilized because the HCA has not issued regulations for covering people that are, non-Medicaid, but they don't have, anyway, it's a very complicated issue. So I think this is very germane to have, and NAMI has some ideas on different things. So that I guess wanted to clarify, the Association of Washington Counties, they have a lobbyist who deals with behavioral health issues. So in terms of a lot of the county things that would affect counties countywide, we're not talking about that. We're talking about specific direct asks for Whatcom County specifically on operational and capital issues. I presume that's what we're talking about.
Right.
Like the whole, Involuntary Treatment Act. I mean, that they've got to do something about that, but it's statewide. So yeah, I would be happy to be involved as a member of this group if the powers that be deem that valuable. But I think I agree we should have how's the county collectively coming up with this, and what's the role of the task force. I would say the behavioral health advisory group. That's, also, I mean, they might have some ask. As some of you know, the North Sound Behavioral Health ASO is doing a 5-county youth mental health assessment, including Whatcom County, which will be unveiled in October. The BHASO is having a get together to talk about, from their perspective, what should be, the legislative agenda of the ASOs for next year. And I would encourage some of you. I know Barry's, on the board of directors there. I would encourage some from the task force who are interested to attend that meeting in person in Mount Vernon. The date in October escapes me at the moment, but anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
I'll get that date out to the group, Brian, because I think you made a good point. The legislative conference thing we're going to do. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Raylene.
Thank you. Yesterday at the council meeting in the morning, there was a small discussion about the Becca bill and the funding that was cut from the Becca bill, federal funding, state funding. And that funds at-risk youth, child in need of services, and truancy programs for juveniles. And it is having an impact on the Superior Court, more in the administration and the juvenile programs than our level. But what happens is when those things aren't funded and we're not able to help the juveniles, then we see them becoming adults. And I know that is something that is on the radar of Kayla and Allie, and something that we want to push for. But as this group, I think that's also something that we're going to want to make sure that we try to find funding to replace those Becca funds that we're not getting currently.
Well, what's everybody think? How do we want to approach this from a task force angle? Do we want to have a work group that could maybe even sit down with the executive's office and start working through some of these things? We've got to be able to get them to chew gum and walk at the same time. I think that's as far as the budget stuff. Because they need to be, they have to deal with the legislative agenda.
Seems like this raises to the level of a work group, and I would be very supportive of a work group that we just spin up and get going to get some volunteers, 3 people, 4 people, and do it right. Try to do it right this year. Maybe it's a little late. Maybe we need to start this in June or July, but I would certainly volunteer for that. Sounds like there's some interest. And Barry, I do believe that you are a critical part of that, and it sounds like you're interested.
Absolutely, yeah. Dan.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that Bellingham City Council has a legislative work group composed of 3 people, 3 electeds that work with our lobbying firm. And it was during session, it was a weekly endeavor. And it's based on the priorities that were agreed upon by council prior to the session. So I think it'd be helpful to, pardon me, maybe just get some agreement on what our priorities are, and then have that work group just go perform the work. We're in a short session this time around, so this would be a good time to test that group and to see, just to get lessons learned. But I think maybe at least one elected and then maybe a couple of other folks from the task force would be helpful.
Should we look for a volunteer to write up a proposal for a work group for the next IPRTF meeting, and already have some volunteers for it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Your question.
No, that's a good idea.
We're a little bit late here. I don't mean to speak out of turn, but we're a little bit late here. So we're September 9th or 10th today.
Yeah.
So if we could get this moving, get volunteers, and then just decide on what we want for priorities, we'd be okay. But we've got to get this done by October. And I think having some pre-meetings with our local representation would be helpful. Just like little sit downs over coffee or what have you with the work group. And then that can prime the pump, so to speak. So when they go into session, they know what we want and what our priorities are.
And we should put it on the calendar for spinning up this work group back up in June or July of next year.
Brian.
I would be willing to write up like a work group description, and I'd be willing to reach out to Jed Holmes, who I know pretty well, to see if we can get a calendar date. Even if it's just you, Barry, I mean, whoever wants to be a part of this, but we could do this even before the October meeting potentially. So anyway, I'd be willing to do a work group, little description.
Okay, then let's start there. Get that to Jill, and then Jill can circulate it. And we can noodle back on it, and everybody be prepared to maybe respond by email so we don't have to wait a full month to move the ball. So look for that in your inbox and provide some feedback. If you're interested in serving, I'm definitely interested in serving. Peter, go ahead.
I would serve, and I would say our goal should be, Brian, you should get right on writing that, and let's get it in the packet for the September meeting and get it approved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And remember, we kind of avoid quorums on any work group. So that's one of our criteria. Jill?
So, Brian, are you wanting to be a member of the group as well, or are you just wanting to write up
if it's the will of the group here, I would certainly welcome being a member of that group.
Okay, so I have Brian, Barry, and Peter. Is there anyone else? Okay, and my suggestion would be to include Brian's write-up in the steering committee report for the full task force meeting on the 22nd. And then when you report out on the committee, Barry, that might be a good time to bring up the work group, talk about the plan, and ask if there are any other IPRTF members who want to join, and probably get some feedback, hopefully from Sept Paul or Kayla about the timelines as well. So
Yeah. Jill, do you have a suggestion for a maximum number of people?
I think, I mean, what are your guys' experience working on groups like this? I feel like smaller is
Yeah,
just
well, me
easier
too.
to grasp
I guess
something.
I'm wondering what would be we're in trouble. We can't go over number. I guess that's what I
I,
was.
I would say 5 or 6 total.
I would say 5 as long, or no more than, if you're gonna have more than 5, they can't all be steering committee members. So your steering committee limit is 4, which you're almost at now. So if there might be 1 or 2 other IPRTF members, then that would work.
Okay. Let's put it out there at the September IPTRF meeting, and but let's be nimble.
Yeah, I'll get that description to you today, Jill. Also, Dan, do you recall if your group has any kind of a little description or a charter or any description of what they do? Or
You can contact Jackie in the council office. She would have
okay,
that information.
thank you.
Okay. And hey, gang, I gotta go. I've got a 2 o'clock that I need to drive to, but good discussion today.
Okay, Dan, thanks for hanging out. See you later. All right, next item is 2026 potential calendar and committee versus work group structure. This is a continuation of our conversation from July. Jill?
Thank you, Barry. Yes, I was tasked at the July meeting with coming up with a few things, working with legal counsel, and the information I've come up with is in your packet. If any of you have that handy, I'm going to screen share. And the first thing to talk about, there's been some discussion about changing the committee schedules for some of the committees. And I'm hearing from folks that an every other month would be an option for some of them, legal and justice particularly, and if behavioral health wants to as well. So can you see my screen with the calendar, the annual calendar on it?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a proposal that I've just worked up as a starting point. And what this does is have committees every other month. January, March, May, July, September, and November. And then, I'm going to interrupt myself here. Marty and Holly, this does not include J-pop at all. So you guys will still be monthly. But for legal and justice and behavioral health, this is an every other month meeting schedule with a joint meeting 3 times a year, as you can see on the screen there.
So are the yellows that are left in on the skipped months, that's steering and task force, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
And what's the crossed out red? Is that where we?
Those are holidays.
Holidays.
So those are just a reminder for me that we can't schedule anything on those days.
Gotcha.
I did leave August blank since that seems to be a month where we end up canceling meetings anyway. So if we just want to go ahead and in the annual schedule next year, just keep that blank for everyone, we can do that. If not, we can go ahead and schedule. April, avoids scheduling meetings during spring break week, which is a challenge for some folks. And then of course, December.
Yeah.
So there's that.
So this would be on choosing the route of keeping the committee structure, but changing the frequency of meetings.
Correct.
in
Yeah.
summary. Okay.
Yes. So that's just one option.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was tasked with doing is working with legal counsel on trying to figure out when committees need to, or when groups need to comply with OPMA and when they don't, and how would a work group structure look like. And in working with our legal counsel, this is kind of what I've come up with. The current committees in the green circle are what we have now. And these work groups that we're talking about in the blue, or excuse me, the red circle, not subject to OPMA if they're not formed by statute or IPRTF vote, a small group of members, no quorum, purpose, one specific topic, and the intent is develop a draft recommendation or proposal to take for consideration then to the full task force or committee. And the work group does not take public comment. So these are just what we talked about just a minute ago for the legislative agenda. This would be the structure of how these work groups could work. So it's basically just a small group of people to come up with something for a committee or for the IPRTF to look at and talk about. Because often what happens is a subject will come up in committee or task force and people will talk around it, but not really have an idea of moving forward or next steps or anything like that. So that's that. And if we did want to sort of formalize these structures, then I've got some proposals to amend the IPRTF bylaws, changing the section ad hoc work groups and committees, temporary work groups or permanent committees. And then there's some language here. I'm not going to read through it. You could take a look at it about how those groups would work so they would meet the requirements of not running afoul of OPMA. One of the things that I put in here, and I was just brainstorming myself, was, and this, Brian, this might be useful to you here. Let's see, ad hoc work groups may be formed. Let's see, work groups may, let's see, there's a section on here about a work group charter here. Do you see this where it starts here? A work group charter identifying the work group convener and describing the purpose, expected outcomes, and expected end date will be submitted. So Brian, that might be helpful to you in putting together whatever it is you're going to put together today. And there's not a whole lot of content in the bylaws about the committee structure that we do now, so I've added it if you want to add that. And really, but it's not necessary. Anyway, that's the work that I've done on the whole committee versus work group schedule and the meeting dates. So I will let you all discuss.
Well, thanks, Jill. You know, the first question I would have is, it seemed in our last discussion that the changing the frequency of committee meetings seemed to be kind of where we were thinking, and it seemed to be our preference because we would be able to retain public comment in our committee meetings when we have them. Then we're still obviously allowed to have our work groups to do the various task-oriented things like we've discussed today. But my question would be, how do the committee co-chairs feel about that every other month? That's an important question. If it's something that they think can still be effective. So let's hear from Brian. You're muted, Brian.
All right. Yes, I support that. I'm noticing, though, that a number of the committees right now generally meet for an hour. Our behavioral health committee meets for an hour and a half. My thought would be if we meet every other month, then maybe that should be for an hour and a half. But I see I support this because I think a lot of the real work of the committees will be in the work groups. And so I think this is a good change and a good improvement.
Okay, that's behavioral health. Bertie, from what's Index? What do you think on behalf of Index? You're muted.
Index meets for an hour every other month right now. And I'm not necessarily suggesting changing it, but with that structure, it is difficult to keep momentum going and to tackle any really major issues. But part of it is Index Committee has evolved to have a fairly narrow role, I think. So I don't think it's representative of the others. It is mostly IT members, and the exec committee was, when I took on the chairperson, was very forceful that they thought their staff was in too many meetings and they really didn't want them doing a lot of creative work. And so we've sort of limited it to facilitating village reach and those kinds of things. So I think it's probably okay for now to leave as it is. I think that there's the data work group that was formed by the two other subcommittees is kind of filling the need of sort of policy recommendations and those kinds of things. So I think as long as we continue with the data work group, that is a unique committee that works fine as is.
Okay. Stephen, what do you think from your perspective?
I'm not sure I have anything to add on this, Barry. I've been sort of more off on the periphery of the committee work.
So you don't see do you not see a big problem in going to every other month?
I don't see a problem going to every other month, but I do see a problem that Bertie pointed out. The meetings I sit in that are an hour, I don't think have enough opportunity to get work done. So I can't remember who suggested, if we go to every other month, going to an hour and a half as a minimum amount. I know lots of members are juggling their lunch hour or their other work demands, but the work is the work.
Well, that's each committee can determine their own meeting length. So, that would be up to your committee. If everybody says, yeah, an hour and a half, then go for it. Raylene.
I know that a lot of us in the Legal and Justice Committee are already juggling other meetings during the lunch hour. So I think going to bi-monthly would most likely be a better option for the Legal and Justice. I do know that an hour does constrain things, so we can bring it up to our group to see if they want to go to at least an hour and a half. But we have been able to manage as long as we keep our topics succinct for that hour. But I think we'll be able to keep the representation from the core members that we really need to have on that committee by going to a bi-monthly.
Okay. Peter.
I'd be interested to see whether the committees, if going to bi-monthly, can maintain the discipline that would be necessary, I think, to get all the critical work done and, presentations and such. And so, I mean, it would be up to, I think it puts more more onus on you co-chairs to make sure that you're not losing the thread by going to bi-monthly. And I'm just going to take a minute to say that the IPRTF BCC work group has, I think, just done an amazing job. 5 meetings, I think 4 or 5 meetings, and we accomplished everything that we needed to accomplish. It's a great model, very flexible. We're done with our work. We're spinning it down. It's over, and has come up with some pretty great work product that was critical to the new jail and behavioral care center process. So I guess I would hope that if we go to bi-monthly, that we really use this work group structure to get a lot of work done. And let's not forget that I think that this whole thing started because we needed to save money. Is that
We're
still
trying
the
to,
case?
free up the council staff.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure that that was stated
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Jill?
And now that we have the 2025 action plan, which includes action plans for each of the committees, thank you to Marty and Holly for all that work. I'm happy to sit down with each of the committee's co-chairs and work up maybe like a draft plan for the year for 2026 with the action plan and say, okay, in this month we want to talk about these things, and then the next meeting we'll talk about those things. And that might help, just a small hour conversation at the very most, develop a plan for the next year and what those committees would talk about to make sure they are hitting all the items on their action plan.
So my next question for the co-chairs is, do you feel like it would be valuable for you to take this to your committees and run this proposal by them? And would you be able to get back to so we could be able to present this to the full task force by the November meeting? Is that something we think we could accomplish through the committees? What I'm trying to do is figure out how we could maybe implement this in January 2026, but we would need the IPTRF to be looking at it in November. So you would have essentially the rest of this month and October to get it through your committees. Is that feasible? I got a nod from Raylene. Brian? Brian's got a nod.
I think it's really just Brian and Raylene. It's really just legal and justice and behavioral health. Bertie's committee will stay the same.
Yeah, that's true.
So
good work, Bertie.
I think we can schedule it on the October agendas for those groups.
Okay. And then steering in October it's the beginning of the month, so we would need steering to look at that in November to come back to us. But let's go full speed ahead. Peter, whatever you want to think we should mention at the IPTRF main meeting coming up, just maybe a heads up, your committees are going to be talking about this. So. Jill?
The only other outstanding question from my perspective is amendments to the bylaws. And if you feel like that's something you want to do, just let me know and I can get that in the works.
I think maybe once everything is figured out and we kind of, get through our process, maybe that would be something that we could do early next year. All right. Any other questions or comments or anything about that committee meeting structure? Peter?
I guess I'm a little unclear whether we're going to address this in the September meeting or maybe the October meeting. Maybe everybody should know about what we're discussing. and Jill could give a quick presentation as she just did to us and the reasons behind it. It seems like if we're trying to get this done by October, I'm sorry, November, right?
Yeah.
Or
Right.
by the end of the year, really.
Yeah, that's the goal, is to make sure
Yeah.
we have it done by the end
So
of the year.
if we give everybody a heads up in October, the co-chairs can from here, from this date forward, be working on getting this done in their committees.
Yeah.
So maybe Jill, if we could put you on the agenda for October? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And I think, Barry, this will probably be a first notice at steering committee report on the 22nd of this month, just to give the.
Yeah, when I do the steering committee report, I'll just again say that we talked about this and you're going to be hearing
Right.
more in your committees and in the October meeting. So,
And then we'll talk about it more in depth in October.
yeah. All right. Sounds like a plan, everybody. Good job. All right. We are at items for the next task force agenda. And Peter, you were saying that we're pretty full, right? As we sit.
Let's see. I have two let's see what's coming up on screen here.
So there have been a number of items added since their packet went out. They're highlighted yellow. And I think, Peter, that does include your BCC work group item, the 23-hour crisis relief center item, and also what we talked about today, Hannah Sloan's report that she gave today. So I will add that as well. Barry, the appointment to the Justice Advisory Work Group, this was the presentation that was given to council yesterday.
Yeah.
Having an IPRTF member on this work group. Is this something you'll want to schedule at the?
Well, the council asked me the same question last night at the end of the night, and
okay,
this group really isn't going to convene until April. It looked to me like
of next year.
Next year, and so for us to appoint a council person, we decided to wait until January when we reorganize because we can't have quorums, right?
Sure.
And they want 3 council members.
Okay.
But 2 are named. Just myself and Councilmember Galloway are named.
Okay.
Then we're going to add a 3rd if we can. But the same might be true for the task force. We could wait until January, I think, to do that.
Yeah.
Unless I hear differently, if I hear something different where they're move up the schedule, we'll get right on it. But I don't think that's going to happen.
That sounds great. We can add it to our committee elections that happen every January. We can add it then as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, go ahead.
Any other things for the agenda for the next task force?
Okay.
Let me know.
So let's see. The 23-hour crisis relief center and BCC work group are very they're very much one and the same because the 23-hour crisis relief center is part of the larger behavioral care site model that I was referring to. And then and so it's big enough that Hannah Fisk needs to make a presentation. I'm wanting to have, now I know that both Maya and Stark are going to be gone. I believe they're out for this meeting, but I would love to have the prosecutors there and perhaps Judge Jones, who were both on the BCC work group, talk about the legal model for prosecutorial diversion that they've come to an agreement around, or it's not a binding agreement. It's a model that they came up with that they all agree could work well. And we have a resolution, or not a resolution, a recommendation from the BCC work group that I'm prepared to read you right now. It would give you all an idea of what it was that we have come up with. And so I'm thinking that this is a large enough, it's a large enough item that it could take a good hour to get it presented and then have discussion. So that's one thing. I know that on I'm pretty sure that 2 months ago, or 3 months ago, we were talking about September meeting having having our co-chairs present what their committees had done in the last year, and then also looking forward to the next year. And of course, we have our standing agenda item of the calendars, priorities, and action plan updates. And really, we could. I would love for our committee co-chairs to really dive into that in a kind of a bigger way than we normally do. So I'm wondering if people would like to hear the rather specific recommendation that's coming out of the BCC work group that we'd be addressing to the IPRTF.
Yeah, I
Or
would love
whether
to.
I should, okay. The IPRTF BCC work group recommends adoption of the Behavioral Care Center model as outlined in the draft document, which will be presented to you. Developed as part of an integrated off-site behavioral health campus, providing inpatient, therapeutic, community-based care as an alternative to incarceration, rather than an in-custody model co-located with the new jail. The model incorporates 4 legal entry points agreed by courts, prosecutors, and defenders. A facility that allows for sufficient capacity to accommodate priority diversion referrals, eligibility for individuals charged with behavioral health-driven offenses, and integration with crisis response and in-custody behavioral health supports. The work group further recommends to the IPRTF and the Finance and Facilities Advisory Board advance this model to the County Council for inclusion in the Justice Project planning and cost analysis with data measures, models, and staffing roles refined as implementation planning proceeds. And I wrote that in a very detailed way because we came to a lot of things, and this model is complex. I think it's very well presented, well thought through, but it is complex, and I really wanted to get all the main points in there. Give everybody a heads up.
Great, thanks, Peter. Good work too. I'm very impressed with that work group's output. I think that we're going to value that a lot. Really?
Thank you.
Just a note, Stark and Maya may not be available, but we do have a second small public defender's office, conflict office. And Ryan Swinburneson is the lead on that. So maybe we could extend an invitation to Ryan or Ashley.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Raylene. Let's see, my intention in saying that about our friends from the Public Defender's Office is that they were part of this work group and were part of that agreement. But what you say is very important. And we realized in our last meeting that, my goodness, we've made some big, not decisions, but agreements here. And now we need to bring in the city. I don't want the mayor surprised, or Ryan Anderson surprised, or anybody else surprised in this. So I'm really trying to reach out to as many people who are going to be affected within the legal system, district court, for instance. And so, because this all is going to affect them. And so I'm not sure how we do it, but I would like invitations to go out to all those parties for this upcoming meeting. I'm not sure how we do that, but.
So the way that happens is you can send out invitations to whomever you like, or you can send me the names and email addresses and I can send out invitations.
Well, thank you for that. Raylene, since you are in the system and I'm not, I would, anybody who's going to be affected by this prosecutorial diversion model that we've come up with, and this behavioral health model. I'm speaking to Heather and Stephen and others here. they're all going to be affected, and we want to hear, we don't want anybody out of the loop. So I would say send your ideas for invitation around those large groups to Jill, and let's try to get as many people to this meeting as possible.
Peter, any materials that you would like included in the packet need to be to me by end of day this Friday, the 12th.
Okay, Hannah Fisk is the keeper of the model document, and she's going to be giving the presentation. So that needs to come from her, and I'm going to send you the draft motion as soon as I'm off this call.
Okay.
Anything else on task force agenda items for upcoming meetings? All right, any other business, anything on anybody's mind they want to bring up? Heather.
Hi everybody. A few things. One, Peter, I was really grateful to get to drop into that behavioral care center meeting last week. And I love that model that you've created of kind of a collaborative space and like very productive decisions being made. And so I'm excited for that to be presented to IPRTF. And I hope you'll share some of the insights and kind of lessons learned of that process, because I think it's replicable with how you brought people together to make that happen. So and I think it came to a really good place. Just for the record, I'm excited about the I think there's trade-offs, obviously, but I think it'll be a good thing for our community for that behavioral care center to be outside of the jail. And I think that as long as we continue to advocate that the prosecutor has a really clear diversion criteria and that transportation issue gets worked out between the jail and the behavioral care center, and that the entire jail is designed as therapeutically as possible. Like those all seem like really good wins for this. The other two things I want to just mention for the good of the order is I did give a presentation to the Child and Family Wellbeing Task Force a couple weeks ago. They asked specifically about how could they weigh in on family, on the intersection of children and families in the justice system. And I was really excited to see Councilmember Barry Buchanan there. And so he got to be my wing person a little bit and fill in some blanks. And I'm hopeful about how that task force might also engage in some of the spaces with us. There's just such clear connections, as you all know, with adverse childhood experiences and childhood trauma and the how that plays out later on, and when people end up in our jail. And then the third thing for the good of the order is I'd love to make sure you're all aware of the All Hands Whatcom Summit coming up on September 24th and 25th. The 24th is the half-day reentry simulation. It's waitlisted right now, but let me know if you want to come and didn't get a chance to go last year, because there's some things we can arrange. And then the full day on the 25th, which is really focused on the opportunity we have right now with the Justice Project. And I'm excited to facilitate a panel that afternoon with Barry and either Sheriff Tank or Caleb and Hannah Fisk on the status of the Justice Project and the ways that the community can stay engaged in knowing what information is current and also advocating for the good things we all want. So thanks for letting me share, and thanks for a great meeting today too. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Heather. Raylene.
Yes, I spoke with Peter a while back about inviting somebody from the fire brigade. We're looking at Justice Johnson from Walla Walla. I reached out to him by phone, hadn't received any response back. So I did send an email out. I included Jill in that, but I wanted to circle back with Peter and see if that's something you wanted to schedule for a steering committee or the task force as a whole.
I'm casting my mind back. That was so many meetings ago.
I know it was a while back, so
it was. I remember it being very, very intriguing and quite important, and it was sounded like really good education for all of us. How long an item do you think it would be?
I'm gonna say he would probably do a 15-minute presentation and give you a 15-minute question and answers,
Yeah.
give or take.
Would you remind the group what this is regarding, and then maybe we can put it on the October, November. I would think that everybody should hear it.
Okay, and so we haven't
So-
heard back from Judge Johnson yet. I was just, when we do, that was part of it. And what Judge Johnson from Walla Walla is, he's part of a team of judges throughout the state that had a presentation training to all of the courts throughout the state administration, clerk's office, as well as inviting the media and press so that we could work together on public distribution. His presentation and topic was on 3.2 factors, release factors for defendants, what the requirements are, as well as how bail is established, why bail is essential, the constitutional requirements with bail, which is a topic that's been focused on legal injustice. We did have a presentation in legal injustice that was well done between Judge Jones and Commissioner Emmerich. But they did a really good job on presenting to the group as a whole, and they do ongoing presentations. And so they did tell us in that meeting that if we reached out, that they'd be willing to assist in other entities. And I thought it would be beneficial for the task force, but I know I talked to you, Peter, about it. It was a while back. We hadn't heard back. So that's where I was at.
Yeah. What's the group think? It seems like an important subject for a lot of us to hear about. And if we can do it in half an hour, it seems like that'd be a lot of great value.
Yeah, I totally agree. Jill, your hand went up and then back down.
Yeah, Peter, you said what I was gonna say, that this is a topic for the IPRTF. It sounds like, just as a reminder, the October meeting is the quarterly report updates from everyone. So I can schedule it then. I can schedule it in November. It might get a little more airtime then. But
November sounds good. I think
Okay.
we should invite our friend and your colleague Barry John Scanlon to this, because he is every time I talk with him, he seems very interested in bail reform, and I think he might. Let's make sure that he's there, because this is an important topic.
Yeah. As soon as everything gets aligned and got that nailed down. Raylene, do you know when you'll get any kind of confirmation, or you're just waiting to hear back from an initial contact?
We're just waiting to hear back from an initial contact. Like I said, the phone call wasn't productive, so an email went out, and so I was hoping we'd hear from him in the very near future.
It might help if now that I think it sounds like November IPRTF meeting, you could just send another email proposing that day and time.
That date is November 24. Raylene, that is Thanksgiving week, by the way.
That's my birthday.
A little present for you, Barry.
Me and Ben and Ellenboss and I have the same birthday. So. Bertie.
Yes, sorry, I have to unmute here.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right, I was thinking that this issue around bail, I think, is an issue that has a lot of public sentiment about it as well. And I sometimes get asked, being on IPRTF, what we're doing about bail. And so I think that perhaps a discussion point following this presentation at our November meeting, I would suggest be, how can we as the IPRTF facilitate making this knowledge more available to the public? You know, whether we have a forum some evening, whether we have summaries on our social media pages plus a forum, but I think we've been quietly researching it in some of our committees and now the IPRTF, but the public is pretty unaware of it, and there's a lot of public that's got fairly strong opinions about the impact of bail. So it's an opportunity for us to fulfill our mission of bringing the public along.
Well, on that note, Peter and I believe Heather are meeting with some folks Monday at 2 p.m. to start planning the first town hall for the Justice Project rollout.
Oh,
So,
good. Okay.
and from my conversations yesterday, it sounds like the goal will be to do it this fall, the first one,
Mhm.
instead of waiting until when we get a price tag, which won't be until, Q1, Q2 next year. So that's in work, and I agree. And it seems like every meeting I'm in, people are always saying how terrible we are at communication.
It's an
I just go,
impossible
yep,
job to start.
yep. I've been
Um,
saying this. I've been saying this for 5 years. So,
right, right.
all right, Jill.
Yeah, we do have a little bit of budget for communications in our budget this year. So I can work with Jenna on maybe doing a boosted post from the IPRTF social media
Mhm,
that will have a wider audience.
mhm.
And by speaking of budget, I think I clawed back the money they were trying to take away from us. So we'll see.
Yay.
So far I keep winning, but I got one more battle. That'll be when the final budget's done at the end of the year. But I think we're going to be fine. We were talking about 40 grand total or something like that. It was for J-pop facilitation and for some of this communications work. So more later, but we're winning. It's just a process. So Brian.
Just real quick, the date of that North Sound Legislative Summit is Monday, October 6th from 11 to 1:30 p.m. at Mount Vernon Community College, and lunch will be served, and you need to RSVP. There's a one pager that Jill can circulate to the entire steering committee that has all the details.
Great. Thanks, Brian. All right, we are at the end of the list here, folks. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address the steering committee?
I don't see anyone attending in our conference room, and we don't have any attendees.
Okay, I'm going to take massive credit for the 2 minutes I'm going to give you back, and and we will see you all at the IPTRF meeting. Take care.